This isn't Fortress Stamford Bridge. We're years away from that team with the strong spine. This is a team of kids just trying to get their confidence back. And suddenly Arsenal smelled blood. They could smell it. That's why they're a very, very good and, far more accomplished football team at this point. From the Men in Blazer studios in the crap part of Bedford and from the crap part of Soho, it's the Men in Blazers video podcast presented by the GFOPs at Camarena, the most awarded tequila.
Oh, we back like the New England Patriots. We're not done yet. Oh, crisp October morning. How you doing, Davey?
Yeah, it's not quite as crisp as I thought it was going to be. I put on a sweater, put on a vest, almost put on the Pep roll neck, Rog. But it's getting a little warmer outside. I know it's going to be crisp soon, though. You're going to get your beloved autumnal nip in the air.
Oh, we'll talk a lot. We'll go deep on the Pep roll neck. In fact, this whole podcast is going to be a whole hour on Guardiola-inspired knitwear. But Dave, sad weekend for all who love English football. I think you'd probably say for all who love England. During Saturday morning's games, that iconic footballing legend, true Manchester United hero, true English national team hero, Sir Bobby Charlton passed away, aged 86. A life well lived, a miner's son who rose to become a global icon, really one of the keepers of the soul of the game in every way, particularly the soul of Manchester United. A gent whose story was a remarkably epic journey, one forged in tragedy. 1958, the Munich air disaster, just 2 years into his senior career. Charlton and the team on their way back from a European Cup game in Belgrade. Halfway home, they refueled in Munich and the plane swerved while landing, went off the runway, crashed horrifically into a nearby home, a fiery wreckage. And somehow, Charlton, then a shy 20-year-old, survived. 23 others lost their lives, passed away, a United team decimated. Charlton, forever haunted by this tragedy, went on to play for 22 more years. Miracle that he survived. But he went on to have 17 years as a pro, a dream of a career, 758 games for United, 249 goals, European Cup, 3 league titles, 1 FA Cup, 106 caps for England when it was bloody hard to win caps in those days. 1966 World Cup title. A Ballon d'Or too, Dave, in a side of the stadium at Old Trafford in his name. In the modern game, particularly when this club has lost its way, he was really the thread that linked, well, all of us to history in human form. The most impactful English football career that there's ever been.
Yeah, I mean, a massively influential over the game, not just domestically, but worldwide. I mean, when you read the tributes coming in from around the world from, players who were lucky enough to play with him, even during his career, the things said about him by the great Pele, many of the great Beckenbauer, many of the great players he played against. And, also his records, so many of those records only recently broken. England caps, goals for England, goals for Man United. They've been broken. They held on for so long. And there is a sense that when he did it, as you sort of mentioned earlier, it was much harder to get that many goals, to get that many appearances. One of my favorite stats is he only received 2 yellow cards in his entire career. One for Man United and one for England. But back then, frankly, it was quite hard to get a yellow card as well. You almost had to...
He tried to get more.
Yeah, exactly. Based on the modern game, like by the Ashley Young rules, I mean, he would have had maybe a century of yellow cards as well. But what a career, what a player, beloved by everyone. And just, you and I were talking before the pod, the Munich air disaster, which was in the background of almost every conversation about Man United when we were kids. I remember reading in Tiger and Scorcher, this brilliant soccer annual that we used to read, reading about that disaster and reading about how, Sir Bobby was saved by one of his teammates. He was literally pulled out of the wreckage by one of the senior players. Just amazing stuff.
Yeah, and his law, the law of 1966, never repeated by the English national team, despite these haunting dreams, which still seem so far away. That hung over the English game. So this team, of whom there's only one surviving member now, the hat-trick hero at the final, Sir Geoff Hurst. They hung like a law. In England, 1066, when we were invaded by the Normans, and 1966, those were the two historic dates that every single school kid knew. And Bobby Charlton, we were laughing before we started podding. He seemed bloody old when we were kids, right? He wasn't. But he seemed like a distinguished, venerable, kind of like old knight back in the 1980s when we were coming of age.
You asked me if I ever met him, and I did meet him at a reception at the Football Association when I was a student, pretty close to leaving university. So I must have been about 22, 23. That would have made Bobby Charlton 50 years old then. And he seemed like an old man, but I mean, he was still, twinkle in his eye, amazing, talking about football, talking about 1966, talking about the old game, talking about like the muddy fields and the conditions they used to play in versus the, as the conditions were getting better in England in the late 80s. But yeah, he was 7 years younger than me.
It is amazing. And he did seem old. I mean, in those days in England, like you're in your 60s, you kind of like retired and just waited for the end to swoop upon you. But Sir Bobby kept going, and I think ultimately the greatest testament to his link in history and is just the fact that he established this position quite rightly as the soul of the game. We're speaking to so many of the young Manchester United stars that have followed, Rashford, Rooney, all the way back to Beckham and his class. And they all say, when they signed their first contract, he didn't just swoop in when they became famous and it was just good for clout. He was at almost all of their first contract signings when they were just 16-year-old kids coming through. So Bobby was always there with his quiet word of encouragement. Obviously, they became stars. There were probably hundreds who didn't, but who just carried just his being with them into the rest of their life. And when we often say this, there will never be his like again. I was listening to all of the Bobby Charlton appreciation on British television this weekend, this universal outpouring of love, respect, admiration, obviously tarnished slightly in a way we don't need to go into. The Manchester City, a small section of the fans, I hope, just their reaction. But I love this fact, Dave. Apparently, Sir Bobby had a swig of scotch before every single game because as a player, it, quote, he thought helped with his breathing, which I just love. Makes me blown away by his performances and his achievements all the more. Keep telling yourself, listeners, that the scotch, it helps you with the breathing and maybe great things can happen to you too. Farewell, Sir Bobby, true gentleman of the game.
Absolutely, Roger. Got to say, that is exactly the same line of defense you gave me when you were heavily into the Johnny Walker Black down in Rio, that it helped you with your breathing and you needed it. What a player. We should also...
that and the cigarette at halftime, two things that make you unstoppable.
Yeah, I went back and watched a bunch of clips of Bobby Charlton playing football. And what was amazing about him is just the versatility he had as a footballer. Played in central midfield, could play in every position in central midfield. That's before we even knew what a 4-4-2 was. Like, it was just like, it was you go and play there and you mark him and that guy and the other one as well.
Kick him, not mark him.
Played all across the front line, mostly known in the left wing and in the centre. But, a superb footballer and must never be forgotten. And he was ahead of nearly all of his teammates in terms of his ability at that time. So rest in peace, Bobby. Okay, Rog, before we get to the football, a quick shout out for everything happening at Men in Blazers World Headquarters this week. Tomorrow, with the return of the Champions League, it is the return of European nights with you and Rory Smith as you're going deep on the Newcastle story ahead of their clash with Dortmund on Wednesday. And also tomorrow, it's a special edition of Do It Live on YouTube. That's right, the new home of Do It Live is YouTube. Rog, this is huge news.
That is right, Dave. Do It Live is now available to watch as well as to listen to, so we can subject your eyes as well as your ears to the agony. Bad news for all you GFOPs, but great news for us because we hope it will lead more of you to our YouTube page, where we've been spending a huge amount of creative energy, so much content, really flourishing there. The Arteta interview we dropped on Thursday. is really beautiful, despite the fact that I'm in it. Just listening to that gentleman talk about leadership and empathy is a thing of wonder. And now subscribe. You won't miss any of our Do It Lives. Come and be with us. We're working out a technology where you can actually be on the YouTube page with your own beautiful visage. Come be with us. Go to our YouTube and subscribe. It's going to be gorgeous.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant, Rog. Can't wait for that. And if that's not a reason to drink, I don't know what it is. Rog, can we get a toast?
Oh, mate, I want to raise my third first Bud Light of the day to Serie USA, because the biggest American bowl game of the year, the Super Bowl, took place this weekend. AC Milan faced Juventus. First time in our nation's history since we won the War of Independence that 4 Americans, that's Quattro Americano, took the field as starters in the Serie A in the same game. It's really an immense achievement that we should savour and not normalise. The game itself, bit of a grind. Once Chow of Milan received a first half red card, Christian Pulisic, frustrated, he was the attacking player, was immediately sacrificed.
Oh.
Juventus toiled too, even against 10 men. But Tim Weah, that beautiful New York bred God got the assist. Locatelli, lovely moment. Ex-Milan himself got the only goal. AC Milan knocked off the top of the table. The slight worry for them now, they've won every single game apart from when they play against the big dogs. They were smashed by Inter Milan 5-1. They now blinked in this game. They're PSG and then Napoli to play this week. Buckle up, you American beauties.
Okay, to the English football now. Slightly less American, but still glamorous, Rog. Chelsea 2, Arsenal 2, a London derby that put fans of both sides through the emotional ringer as ascendant Arsenal visited a Chelsea side hoping to jumpstart their season, and it was Chelsea who took the lead in the 17th minute after a somewhat controversial William Saliba handball allowed Cole Palmer to hit home from the penalty spot. Chelsea doubled their lead in the 48th minute with a dictionary definition Ukrainian shaskrot from Mickey Mudryk. But, Roger, this is sadly not Uncle Gunnosaurus's Arsenal. They bite back, and a 77th minute strike from Deco Rice and an 84th minute clever finish from Leandro Trossard see them rescue a point, stay unbeaten on the season. But Rog, there is a lot to unpack here.
So much, man. So bloody much. By the way, it's starting to get away from us, but this was another weekend, another Mikel Arteta managerial loving. Really, to me, a sign of his managerial ascension. Here he faced Pochettino, his teammate back at PSG in 2001 when Arteta was 18 years old and a wily Poch was 28. And the two were at real pains before this one to call each other family. There was a real Scooby-Doo kind of helmet head Scrappy-Doo vibe on the sideline. Despite the high stakes, Chelsea, your Chelsea, poised to test their green shoots of resurgence, but this time against a bona fide heavyweight. They'd not really played the top 6 team of any kind since that false dawn of the 1-1 opening game against Liverpool. Here, it was unbeaten Arsenal, a team who had done the double against them for the last 2 seasons, a statistic that I just found incredible to realise. Arsenal, with a taste of Manchester City's blood still fresh in their mouths, looking to surge and grab that nettle of first place. Bukayo Saka back. But they look so shaky from the off. Centre-backs vulnerable. Chelsea midfield controlling the game. Mudryk and Raz. An anger-filled Raz. Charged at will. Saka and Martinelli couldn't get into the game. Gallagher and Palmer just pressing the life out of them. Arsenal cautious on the ball. Chelsea feisty. 25th minute. Gusto cross. Mudryk got his little head on it. Saliba went all Mutombo, swatting the ball off the header. And they were, by the letter of law, a penalty. Intent doesn't matter according to the way the law is written. We're both recovering lawyers, so I'll read the legislation quickly. A player is considered to have made their body unnaturally bigger when the position of their hand/arm is not a consequence or justifiable by the player's body movement for that specific situation. I mean, the odd thing is, that's the law, but the spirit of the law, it doesn't seem to take in physics. It also doesn't seem to take in account that the attacking player can use their arms without any fear of a penalty to jump, whereas the defender absolutely can't. Feels to me kind of against the spirit of the game, against the spirit of science. Or were you just like, at this point, that's a stone cold penalty?
I mean, look, who knows? I don't even bother trying to think about whether a penalty is stone cold or incredibly controversial now. You talk about it's hardly the application of the spirit of the game. I just love your naive belief that the referees even apply the actual laws. There's not like the spirit. We're way beyond.
I yearn for the days when the referees just violated the spirit of the game. Now they're just pulling crap out their arse. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no, everything. But I would like rewind a little on this because, you know, Mudryk, a much maligned player on this podcast and everywhere else up and down the game of football. And will be maligned for the rest of this podcast as well, certainly for claiming, you know, for at least for a bit that he intended his later goal. But this move started when he won an incredible header in central midfield, and he's starting, you can just feel the belief start to come about him. And he went in, he won a really difficult header in midfield and set up the attack that at the end, he ended up getting on the end of that ball from Malo Gusto from. And I got to tell you, there is no way that Saliba thought that Mudryk was going to get, and this goes to your intent argument, but it also goes to the belief of, you know, Mikel Mudryk. He managed to win that ball in the air, a ball that Saliba, when he went up for it with his arm out, never believed that Mudryk was going to get ahead of him for. He made incredible distance. He ran
A, because it was difficult, and B, because it was Mudryk.
Yes, both. And just the speed of the Ukrainian is somewhat remarkable. And he got there first. He's playing with a lot more intent. And because he got there first, you know, what looked like it was just going to be a routine header for Saliba, he missed it and it goes out to the outstretched arm. Am I surprised it was given? No. Am I relieved that it was given? Yes. I said it's somewhat controversial. Based on penalties given this season, even for handball, it probably doesn't even rank top 10. But certainly, if I were an Arsenal fan, I would have felt fairly aggrieved at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those decisions. There's no such thing as wrong or right. I think your point is really well taken. Now, we've dispensed with them a long time ago. I think every single team and every single fan, it's one of those decisions. All we can say, because we don't care about wrong or right anymore, this is football. You can unleash a moment from your own team's past 2 seasons where you either weren't given a penalty for a similar offence or you were given a penalty for that similar offence, and just howl. Everybody howls in agony in those moments now. Essentially, you just get PTSD from when you were utterly screwed in your own key moment. Raz stepped in. He wanted Enzo to take it. Cole Palmer, there, was given the nod. Got to say, ruthlessly clinical for his first ever goal at the Bridge. I think this is unofficial, still to be confirmed. All-time Cole rankings. Is it Ashley, Andrew, Joe, Palmer now? Natalie probably somewhere in there, Dave.
Does Lloyd Cole not even make the list?
Oh, God bless Lloyd Cole. If you don't know who Lloyd Cole is, just go and Google rattlesnakes now, and we've just given you a gift. Are you ready to be heartbroken? It's probably one of the stealth top 10 great songs all time. But this was the first goal Arsenal had conceded on the road all season. How would they respond? And the honest truth was, they appeared to be, in English football terms, I think you technically have to say, not quite at it. Arteta hooked top 5 in awards, least offensive defender, Zinchenko at half-time, but it didn't make a lot of difference. And it would get worse for Arsenal Football Club. Ødegaard conceding possession, and it was Mudryk, a player narrative Arsenal had wanted to buy before he went to Chelsea in exchange for piles of cash. He charged forward, so much time and space. A cross that he will go to his grave pretending was a shot. I mean, to me, we're talking about it, dictionary definition, Shas this. The pass that ends in the back of the net, floated above a flailing, stranded, under the scrutiny microscope Raya. Peter Drury screamed, beautiful this. This was incredible. He screamed, beautiful accident by Mikhailo Mudryk, which is just a perfect way to summate Mudryk's essence in its entirety. I think that's the name in Ukrainian of his autobiography. I am a beautiful accident. But what did you experience in this moment, Dave? a goal for Ukraine. I think that was his first midweek. Just before the break, his first ever for Chelsea. This was his first goal at home, Davo. Just, good Lord. I mean, humanly, it was a delight to witness any which way.
Yeah, look, Chelsea were playing fantastically. And I think to appreciate how badly Chelsea blew this game, to sort of have that argument, you've got to also appreciate how well Chelsea were playing and how outmatched, honestly, Arsenal seemed in midfield. You referred to the pressing earlier. Gallagher, just excellent here. Palmer, just excellent. And, the speed of Mudryk bothering Arsenal all day down that right-hand side, going outside, going inside. And yes, he's got acres of time and space because he's so bloody quick. So he gets into speed and he covers enormous amounts of ground. I love this. I even went back and watched the highlights on Chelsea Fan TV. And even on Chelsea Fan TV, not the most objective media platform to cover Chelsea games. Even on Chelsea Fan TV, they immediately accepted that it was a crot, that it was unintentional, and stuck by that. I've only met 2 Chelsea fans who believed it was intentional, and that was my 2 nephews, Harrison and Luke. Luke particularly texted me immediately when I said, no, he didn't mean that. Look at him. He's looking down after he's trying to pick out Raz. And he goes, no, he gave the keeper the eyes, which I loved, by not looking at him.
Fascinating. I realised because it was Mudryk actually not looking at the goal is probably what he...
Yeah, it's probably a good one.
Yeah, for the past 50 shots, he's looked at the goal and missed. So he's trying a whole new technique. So there is that possibility.
Yeah.
But I loved his comment post-game. He said it was something in the middle between a cross and a shot. Mudryk, we have a name for that, don't we, David?
Yeah, an accident.
Yeah, no, it's a chasse.
Yeah.
It is an utter chasse. But he finished before the game. Our goalkeeper coach told me to look at their keeper. Sometimes he's trying to read things, but he didn't look at the keeper.
No, he didn't.
He just mishit it. But it is lovely to see him persevere and the goals start to come for him. I also love the way he also perseveres with the headband.
Yeah.
Despite his immensely short haircut, it's just one of the greatest things in football. That to me, that commitment to the headband.
Talk about commitment. I think he's getting his neck tattoos touched up because they seem to not be fading whatsoever. They still have they have enormous colour to them still.
So just in for the touch-up today, Mikel.
I think he's getting touch-ups.
God bless him. He can do whatever he wants because it is working and it is a human delight. But football, Arsenal fans, 1 minute, you're savouring a win against Manchester City and you can almost taste that title. Oh, it tastes of Giroud's sweat and Old Spice that you've always dreamed of. The next, you're being bum spanked by Burley Ball. Got to ask you, was David Raya at fault there?
No, I don't think so. Even Lee Dixon, who's not often a proponent, a supporter of goalkeepers, wouldn't criticize him in that moment.
He would never have thought shot there, right? It was a complete fluke.
And I wouldn't blame Raya for that at all. I know, of course, this is going to be a story because Aaron Ramsdale's still sitting on the bench, and there's been a few little confidence hiccups from Raya over the last couple of matches, but I wouldn't blame him for that. No.
I mean, ultimately, this was not a Raya mistake, but the optics of it, as you point out, him flailing, fit the narrative that we want to jam them into of a goalkeeping hot mess. Raya clearly rattled within minutes, crapped the bed, playing out the back, tried to give Cole Palmer a gift. I think technically, Raya was having what's called an Onana of a performance. And for this one, Ramsdale was away. Congratulations to him. Away with his family, just had a kid, a baby boy. Probably would have been loving the performance after admitting midweek. Found this interview, honestly, really hard to read. He admitted he found that he admitted he was suffering and, quote, hurting. Those were his words because of the sudden predicament, losing his place at Arsenal. But I was in awe of this moment of Chelsea Football Club. I want to acknowledge this because I know we're about to descend into the madness of the game, but how Chelsea had managed it. They were robust, they were organised, they seemed physical when they needed to be. They didn't give Arsenal so much as a handhold to climb back into this one. Thiago and Enzo seemed to be clenched fists. It felt like we were watching something, an announcement, a mini coronation, a letter of intent signed by one Mr. Todd Burley. as is Chelsea. Your Chelsea, Davo, they seem to be on the road to a third consecutive win, a signature win. First at home. Didn't Arsenal look finished? Didn't they look cooked? But didn't it seem like a lifeless performance? 13 minutes to go. The fans were chanting the name of Aaron Ramsdale as if they'd given up too.
Yeah, look, and I think to really, as I said, to properly absorb the pain of what happened next for Chelsea fans, you've got to talk about the good stuff. And it's not only that Chelsea were playing beautiful football and really dominating Arsenal in midfield. As we've said, one of the top two sides in England, if not in Europe. And Chelsea was superb, and it was their young players. It was these players who've had massive question marks thrown at them. A lot of these acquisitions, whether it was Mudryk, whether it was Palmer. I thought Caicedo was fantastic in this game. I thought
Cucurella
filling in at right back. Remember, we are still missing our best player and our captain, who is Reece James. Reece James is undoubtedly Chelsea's best player, and he's the leader of this team. And Chelsea were just playing so well, and performances all over the field. It's hard to find anybody who you thought, other than, what then happened with our goalie, who wasn't playing well in this game. And yes, so that makes what happened next over the next 15 minutes, painful, and it made it a painful weekend. But I do think that long term, there is a lot to take out of this performance, and where Poch, and he deserves an enormous amount of credit, is taking this team.
It's great to see Reece James rebound from his injury, make a cameo late appearance. But seasons have motifs. There's the invincible season. There's the quadruple. There's the triple season. There's the Liverpool asterisk season. I mean, there's many major narratives that are available. This, Dave, is the season in which no one can play goalkeeper anymore because under no real pressure, Chelsea Sanchez, to the left of his box, decided, you know what? I'm going to pass down my own gut to pretty well nobody. Declan Rice swooped onto the ball. This gent who had been nurtured by Chelsea, let go at 14. I think a truly painful moment in his life. And he wreaked a terrible vengeance with immense technique and poise and muscle memory, sweeping that ball in with just a deadly, flourishing, tremendous arc into the corner. It was instinctively beautiful, Davey.
Yeah, it was a great finish. I mean, it wasn't only a terrible giveaway. Sanchez isn't even anywhere near guarding his own net at the point that he gives it away, and doesn't even make an attempt on the ball. It was needless. And suddenly the entire game changed on that moment.
Yeah, I've got to say, in this goalkeeper war, Sanchez may soon be feeling the pressure of one Djordje Petrovic, the 24-year-old Serbian international who joined over the summer from New England Revolution. But at that point, let me ask you this. Were you thinking consolation goal for Arsenal? We'll have the ability to see this one out. Or were you suddenly, more in my mindset when I watch any team that I love, where you're just like, oh my God, hand me my extra pairs of underwear. Oh, this is going to be an awful finish.
Yeah, after that goal, I'm crapping my pants. Absolutely. I'm like, this is done. This isn't the Chelsea. This isn't Fortress Stamford Bridge. We're years away from that team with the strong spine. This is a team of kids just trying to get their confidence back under Poch. And you could just feel the tension in the ground. You could feel the tension all over my group chats. It was it was palpable. And suddenly Arsenal smelled blood. They could smell it. That's why they're a very, very good and, far more accomplished football team at this point.
Yeah, Arteta unleashed Belgian pocket rocket Trossard and Chelsea old boy Kai Havertz, and that substitution paid off within 5 minutes. Saka, who had been absent almost the entire game, and the Arsenal fans are always like, why does Arteta grind Saka into the ground? Why does he always play him? This was probably why Arteta always tries to have him on the field, because he knows in key moments this gentleman is just an immense game changer. Just an exquisite run, deep cross, Trossard, wide open back post. Gusto, God bless, switched off, lost him.
Yeah, went somewhere.
Yes, somewhere in the vicinity. Just a delicious sucker punch. I've got to say, in time added on, Chelsea almost nicked it. Nicholas Jackson almost rounded Ray up. Arteta honestly would have imploded. It would have just been a pair of smoking sneakers on that sideline. But I've got to be honest, this game, I don't know if it's me aging or what it is. I felt for Chelsea fans, Dave. I did 30 minutes away from beating Arsenal at the Bridge for the first time in 5 years, which is mind blowing. What were the emotions as you kind of cautiously, quietly, surreptitiously had to stub out that victory cigar?
I mean, look, it was a bad weekend. You know, as we've spoken so many times on this pod, you know, sometimes draws feel like draws, but very often, especially in big games, there are draws that feel like losses and draws that feel like victories. And for Arsenal fans, this felt like a victory. And for Chelsea fans, this felt like a loss. However, that is when we sit within the 24-hour, 48-hour news cycle of sport. And I think I didn't meet an Arsenal fan going into this game who didn't think they were going to win this game. And that is still 2 points dropped in what is going to be a very close title race for them. And I think for Chelsea, rather than just nick a result, nick a win when they weren't playing particularly well, I do think that the performance he's getting from not only the team, but from individual players now, I think that is, you're starting to see what Chelsea could be in the future. And I must say, Cole Palmer looks like, you know, we always talk about, you know, a guy leaves a big club to go somewhere else so that he can go and get more football. Talk about a player who made the right decision to go and get more football. Right now, it looks like the right decision. And it makes you realize how great Man City are that he couldn't even barely get a game for that team.
It's
But no,
fascinating.
I think
It's
it's good.
fascinating
I
that.
think it's good for, I think overall, I'm left on Monday morning. I feel very differently than I did on Saturday night or Sunday morning. Monday morning, I feel a lot better about where Chelsea are going.
God, when I watch Cole Palmer, I do wonder if Pep Guardiola is starting to make short-term decisions rather than lay them down for the long term because he knows he's not going to be around for that long term. I think he's a fantastic pickup by Chelsea Football Club. And then the corollary is Conor Gallagher, who Chelsea did want to be rid of themselves in the summer, looking like an ecstatic, kinetic, undroppable force of nature suddenly, which is magnificent to watch. And those things do augur well for Chelsea. And I'm going to say, if I offered you a draw before the game, you would have bit my arm off, right?
Your arm, your shoulder, half your chest, Rog, without a doubt.
So what's missing still? That kind of killer instinct that does haunt you with a brutal gauntlet, yes, of Tottenham, Manchester City, Newcastle, Brighton, and Manchester United. I think it's in 5 of their next 6. This club's still unable to beat a Big Six team under the new ownership. And I do wonder, you know, that TikTok question, how often do you think about the Romans, Dave? I think that's one that bites a bit harder for Chelsea fans, right?
Yeah, well, I think for me, it's how often do you think about Brentford? Because I'm still worried about our next fixture. But yeah, look, Chelsea, I think, though, the fact that we got that great result, you know, opening day of the season and outplayed Liverpool, and the fact that this is the other very good team that we've played this season, you know, and are performing pretty well. I would say I'm not optimistic going into these games, but I feel much better about Chelsea than I did a few weeks ago. And I feel that, you know, the speed, Chelsea's speed is something that every team, and the press in midfield is something that every team's going to have to worry about. So we'll see.
For Arsenal, a poor performance, undone to 2 suspect goals, yes, but that fight back, being able to get anything, being able to get something out of this game, that perseverance, that will to force themselves into a game lost, I do believe it will stand them in good stead. Arteta talked about the phenomenal mental strength post-game. His team remain unbeaten. They're in second place, level on points with Manchester City. I actually loved what Arteta said post-game. What I really liked was going into the dressing room and that dressing room being quieter after playing 2-2 against Chelsea than when 2-0 down, because I know that they want more. To more, Arsenal fans, to more.
Absolutely impressive. You mentioned Man City. They were at home against Brighton and beat them 2-1. City came in having lost 2 straight in the league, and they had to face that football hipster's delight, Brighton and Hove Albion. And you just knew Pep wouldn't let them lose a third straight. A 7th minute plant foot spectacular from Julian Alvarez, and a 14th minute arrow. I mean, was it faster than an arrow from the longbow in football boots that is Erling Haaland? Killed this game off pretty early. But Brighton made it somewhat interesting late via an Ansu Fati goal. But City returned to winning ways and at the time of recording are back atop the Premier League.
God, they're intriguing battle, this one. Two teams seeking to straighten their crowns, De Zerbi's. Darling Brighton, attempting to reassert their record of being pound for pound the most admired team in English football. Manchester City, treble aficionados coming off. Really hard to even conceive. It's one of those things like, how did this even happen? 2 straight league defeats. A 3rd straight loss would have marked the first time that's happened under Pep Guardiola in the Premier League. So Pep did what Pep does, his traditional kind of pre-game trick of heaping his praise on his opponents. But here, you kind of really felt that he meant it. De Zerbi, that enigmatic gent who looks like he's hired the former Leicester groundskeeper just to manicure his beautiful facial hair. And Pep countered it, realizing he had to kind of grab the world's spotlight. He had to look bloody handsome on the sideline. He pulled out all the stops. He went thick, grey, woolen roll neck. And Davo, what did you make of it? Because GFOP, Mark Dolce, great GFOP, said, well, we can all admire the avant-garde hooligan of Pep. The turtleneck is the best Pep style choice because when he's wearing it, Pep looks just like a sardine boat captain.
Yeah, it's just perfectly baggy as well, Rog. The baggy around the arms, the neck. I mean, very hard to pull off that kind of a floppy. Was it a turtleneck? Is it a roll neck? Just a lot going on with that sweater. I felt there was some elasticity in the material. I don't think it was pure wool. I don't think it was cashmere, but I think it had some of that in it. But it was the elasticity, it was the cut, it was the bagginess, it was the looseness of the neck. I mean, I thought he aced it. And that kind of game, when you're playing against the hipsters at Brighton and Hove Albion, when you're playing against a manager as cool as De Zerbi, I thought this was a big move, a big shout, and ultimately a successful one.
It was like
from the
it's as
Spaniard.
if Pep had just been raiding Ernest Hemingway's wardrobe, wasn't it? It was like Beppingway. I am now Beppingway.
Yeah,
it was.
Whom the Pep tolls. I love it.
I mean, it is. It was an exquisite move. He made it look incredible. It's incredibly hard to pull that off. I've got to tell you that. I will look at that with so much admiration. You pop that on Roger Bennett, and that sweater will add about £40 in 20 years.
Yeah, a bald man should not be able to wear a turtleneck or a roll neck. I mean, just should not. You look like a turtle. You look like a tortoise. It's just not a good look. And yet, Pep pulled it off.
God, he looked incredible.
Respect.
By the way, when you said you think there's a bit of cashmere in there, do you think Pep owns anything in his wardrobe that doesn't have a little bit of cashmere in it at this point, just sprinkled in there just because? But as great as it was to see this, for City fans, even better. Probably even better to see Rodri back from his 3-game suspension for deciding to measure Morgan Gibbs' neck size mid-game with his hands against Forest, and Rodri right back in there in the tactical role known as Rock and Shield. Just stunning to watch him. That big paint roller in a team filled with Van Gogh long-haired paint brushes. And the game began pretty well how we imagined it would. Foden, the creative engineer that Brighton couldn't live with. Doku skinning James Milner on repeat. You got no respect for the elderly. Just got to the byline over and over and over. The angle pullback finally found Alvarez, who mishit his shot. But to his advantage, even his mishits are now looking masterful past the despairing Jason Steele. 7 goals and 5 assists for Julian Alvarez this season. They were stealth greatest striker in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, just outstanding. I mean, a superb player. I found myself during this game just spending 5 minutes isolating my focus on a different Man City player at a time, and just marveling at the ability of Phil Foden or marveling at the ability of John Stones. And Alvarez, just his movement, his decision making. I mean, just the football that he and they are able to play at their disposal, it is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, any other team and Julian Alvarez would be the superstar on that starting 11. But on this one, he's almost like just a pragmatic, functional gentleman, but it is an ecstasy to witness. And we talked about Pep's admiration for RDZ as a tactical genius, but we're probably 100% sure he's never been a bigger fan of those tactics. And in the 17th minute, when 19-year-old Cameroonian Carlos Baliba decided to gift possession to Erling Haaland, about 25 years out, Erling, with the good hair, then took 3 staccato touches and just decided to unleash a thrash chop shot miles downtown for him. I mean, you've got to measure the distance for him. Like every foot that's away from goal by about X5. This was just like a halfway downtown thrash for him, but he delivered it with all the certainty of Achilles, thrusting his spear into Hector's neck at Troy. 2-0, 9th goal of the season, first in 3 games for him. But this is his 45th Premier League strike, same number as the great Ilkay Gundogan. He played for 7 seasons. Haaland has had 1 season and 9 games. And in that moment, didn't it feel like, oh my God, Brighton, by some distance, are capable of conceding more than anyone else in the top half of the table? It felt like City were going to just roll 5, maybe 6. It wasn't a matter of what in that moment. It felt like a matter of by how many.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that Haaland shouldn't have got 3 goals for that, just 1 strike, because he hit it so bloody hard, and just on a just speed and power basis alone. But yeah, it felt like this was comfortable for City, and they then did what they do sometimes do, is they conspired to play beautiful football and outplay Brighton by some distance, but not figure a way to put the ball on the frame.
Yeah, they do have this tendency second half to kind of go into hibernation mode, cruise control, and Brighton, who had lacked a threat for that entire first half, threw on Barcelona speed exile and Ansu Fati, and suddenly looked like Brighton again, attacking with risk and courage and confidence and verve. Matoma skinned Walker, Fati pounced on a limp Manuel Akanji, and just lashed home. And Konji's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day continued in injury time, sent off, forcing a suddenly stressed up City to kill off the game with 10 men. Fati did set up Matoma, but he couldn't convert. And you kind of realise just the relish and relief that City showed when surrounding in a group substitute goalkeeper Stefan Ortega, who was filling in for the post-international break exhausted Ederson. He made a late routine catch off a cross, and they just hugged him as if they just won the World Cup. That, to me, was the symbol of just how much Brighton had made them sweat on this day. City scoop up all 3 points, go top. 4-Pete, back on track. We should say Brighton, that 2-front battle, as Napoleon found out, maybe De Zerbi is experiencing those vibes about the multiple front. They host Ajax, listing themselves Thursday in the Europa Conference League. City, meanwhile, have young boys midweek in the Champions League before going across town for a Manchester derby at the weekend. Cannot wait for that game. Roll on next Sunday.
Yeah, and also Godspeed to Solly March. Picked up a horrible injury at the end of that game. Wish him well in his recovery. Okay, Sheffield United 1, Manchester United 2, just hours after news of Sir Bobby Charlton's passing. United go out and deliver late victory at Bramall Lane. The game was knotted at 1 after yet another Scott McTominay goal. He's on fire, Rog, but almost immediately after scoring, he gave away a penalty down at the other end via a handball, which Canal Street McTominay, Ollie McBurney, thundered home. But in the 77th minute, a quite incredible Diogo Dalot curling effort, woof, from distance earned ETH's mob all 3 points.
Game began with really a beautiful, emotionally rich, poignant moment of applause for Sir Bobby Charlton. Did feel for Manchester United having to play so quickly after the enormous sense of loss, the enormous awareness of a vacuum which had been torn into the club's fabric that would never truly heal. You could see in the tears in the eyes, Ten Hag's assistant, long-time United fixture, Steve McLaren, there on the bench. He knows, they know how immense of a loss Sir Bobby is to the very fabric, the very future of United's club culture. And that body blow of a loss, United were perhaps forgiven for a really putrid start to the game, super slow. Sheffield United, God bless them, 1 point all season, and that one prize from Everton Football Club. Squad ravaged by horrible long-term key injuries, but bless them, first to everything, well up for it. United, all their worst tropes under Ten Hag, vulnerable, sloppy in possession, desperate times, which is, and desperate times are, Scott McTominay's music, Scottish Lord and Saviour, Scott McTompele stepped up like Bonnie Tyler holding out for a hero, scuffed a volley straight into the bottom corner. Not pretty, but Davo, when you're in the kind of form that Scott is in, that hero's form, tennis players say the ball just looked massive. They all go in.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sheffield were outplaying Man United. They were ascendant. They had great energy at Bramall Lane, all over the field. I was watching young Ryan Brewster suddenly looking like a real Premier League player at this point. It's a superb performance. And Ollie McBurney, he's the kind of Premier League footballer I love players like this, players who've toiled around throughout their careers, but now finding a way. There's never a moment where I thought he was going to miss that penalty. It was fantastic.
God, it's like in Liverpool, there's lots of stores that are named after, Harrods, the big superstore. There's like Carrods in Liverpool, just knock off impressions. It's as if Sheffield United, like McTominay's good. Let's guess. McBurney, just a knockoff. I mean, McTominay is a knockoff of a football player. McBurney is a knockoff of a knockoff. I think you sign him for the bar fights. By the way, can we just say the McTominay thing, humanly magnificent. And so is watching Harry Maguire. Very, very, very solid. Again, him just stepping on a football field for Manchester United, who've made it so clear that he was absolutely surplus to every requirement, cast off to West Ham. It didn't go through, and in their moment of need, to have the courage, the confidence to play lockdown football. I really admire it, and I do admire Sheffield United too, to find the ability to continue when they've been just so Emily Blunt this season. So it was some shock. 4 minutes later, they found a way back. Cross from the right, it was McTominay who it struck on the arm in the box again. Tad harsh. Genuinely seemed to be pulling that arm out of the way in horror. But another VAR check, and Ollie McBurney, as you say, smashed it past Onana. Second half, Rashford continued to frit away chances in a United shirt that you just know he would be converting in a heartbeat if he was playing for England. United tried to ramp up the pressure. Amrabat, he looked like full of promise. Let's say that. Smacked the frame of the goal. Bruno put the rebound narrowly wide, dominating possession United. The frustration mounting sufficiently for the match director to start to ratchet up the close-ups of a frustrated, slightly panicked-looking Ten Hag on the sideline. Q. Just a moment, Dave. 77th minute, Diogo Dalot picked up the ball from Lindelof. Very little on option-wise in front of him. Just what he did, Dave. I mean, it could only be described as Bobby Charlton-esque.
Yeah, I mean, the Portuguese, wow, what a moment of skill from him. It's just I think when Fotheringham looks back at it, he might regret that he didn't save it. He does appear a little undersized. Maybe should have, got a slightly stronger hand to the ball as he.
But no one can play keeper anymore. Season off.
That's true.
TM.
It's very true. But it was a beautifully caressed finish. Exactly. He put it exactly to within an inch of where he was aiming that ball. Beautiful goal.
God, the United faithful just exhaled. They came out with a chance of there's only one Bobby Charlton. 3 points for United. Hard fought 3 points, but so bloody needed. They still look like a team without a system, waiting for a moment of individual brilliance rather than any even nod at cohesive team play, symbolised in fact by the goal. Statisticians decided, this is incredible, that it had a 0.03 expected goal chance of going in, that shot. Harsh on Sheffield United, admirable fight, as was metaphorically expressed by the chair, I crap you not, which was thrown from somewhere at Dalot as he celebrated the goal. Bit odd. Manchester United, no doubt they'll need more than this. In the Manchester derby next weekend, really the uncertainty at all levels of the club at the moment. The off-field news that local boy turned chemical billionaire, every city has one of those, Jim Ratcliffe, outmaneuvered the Qatari bid for United and is poised to spend $1.58 billion. That's $1.58 billion on just a 25% share of the club, plus some form of control, which is still TBD. But so much in flux, Dave, at that club at every level, on the field, in the manager's dugout, in the boardroom, just every level cries out for sage, strategic leadership.
Yeah, I must say, as a former lawyer, Rog, I've loved some form of control. That I would worry about that if I read that in a contract. You're going to have some form of control. Not so good.
You've got to vote.
We're not telling you what in or what about. We might consult you on next season's third strip. Maybe you might get that.
God, I got to say, as an Everton fan, I cry out just watching my team bite your arm off for some form of control. Yeah, it was only $1.58 billion, though. What do you expect? Control.
Aston Villa 2, West Ham 1, a good old-fashioned claret and blue derby via two teams that are off to a hot start to this Premier League season. It was that Brummy army that went ahead via a pair of goals from Brazilian Douglas Luiz, who has now scored in 6 consecutive home Premier League games. Jared Bowen pulled one back off a deflection, but not before Ollie Watkins could squash Hammer's hopes by smashing home a third, his 5th goal of the season. CONCACAF's Leon Bailey made it 4 with a little Kingston shimmy, shake and finish. And so Aston Villa move into the top 5, just 2 points of City and Arsenal, despite the literal weight of their shirts, Rog.
Two teams who both believe they can make a claim to establish themselves as the best of the rest. They should have a trophy for that. Best of the rest, Dave. Last season, got to remember where Villa are coming from. They lost this one. They played totally unmoored football. The fans booed them off the field. Steven Gerrard was then the manager. Unai Emery rang up a year in charge this week by handing out really a true walloping to the Moyes backside with his high risk, high reward, high line, leading Villa to their best starts. Magnificent. After 9 games in 25 long aspiration-filled years, cohesive team performance in which they really enforced their will on their opponents. Douglas Luiz, just magnificent, really a symbol, perfect symbol of the Emery Renaissance. Transformation, which has been a large part, a bit like Eddie Howe at Newcastle, done by, yes, bringing in intelligent talent, but mostly by improving the players who are already there. Players like Leon Bailey, who you mentioned, Ollie Watkins, 5 goals, 5 assists on the season, just magnificent. But it is Douglas Luiz. I mean, and I think Steven Gerrard had him as just a defensive midfielder who he was willing to dump, who he tried to sell. To watch him transform, Davo, into this potent midfield goal scorer, it's been magnificent to witness.
Yeah, fantastic player. And on what is becoming steadily a fantastic team, superbly coached by Unai Emery.
11th successive home win for Emery, who's on a kind of a revenge tour and a deep desire to prove himself, not to himself, but to the English media, the English fan base after his Arsenal experience. Since his arrival, he's delivered more wins than any team, bar City, Arsenal and Liverpool. Villa within 2 points of the top on a day which when everything went right. Even Tielemans, who's been miserable and reportedly want away, even he, David, left the field smiling.
Newcastle 4, Crystal Palace 0. A Geordie barbershop quartet of goals from Jacob Murphy, your mate Anthony Gordon, a Longstaff brother to be named later, and Callum Wilson see the Toon run roughshod over Palace. Newcastle continue to put open water between themselves and that slow start to the season. They are unbeaten in 8 games in all comps,
amazing,
scoring 22 goals and conceding just 3.
God, best of times, oddest of times on Tyneside after that blip in the season, which led to a lot of Eddie Howe degradation. They are back. It's remarkable how potent the football is that Eddie Howe has coaxed. But there is still some shocking confusion around their summer marquee signing. The extremely handsome Sandro Tonali, who was hailed as an incredible piece of Newcastle business when he signed the 23-year-old AC Milan captain. How have we got him for a mere 66 million? They all bellowed. If only the Romans, Davo, had a word for caveat emptor.
Yeah,
Fire
exactly.
beware. If you don't know, the club was stunned, midweek by news coming out of Italy that Tonali is poised to receive a long-term ban after he was revealed to be central in an enormous illegal betting scandal that's roiling Italian football. Italian football, you know how they say hockey is like, it's something like a sport, with where a bit of sport breaks out in between the fights. Italian football seems to be where a little bit of football breaks out between the enormous nationwide scandals. This one is really awful.
Yeah, nearly all financial. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, the ones that they're fairly chill about are just a referee, just a refereeing scandals. But this one is an illegal betting scandal, and he's at the centre of it. It was a Forza Tonali banner unfurled before the game by the Newcastle faithful. This will almost be his last game. Almost certainly be his last game for bloody ages. And it was really, I've got to say, surreal watching him warm up to a standing ovation from the Toon fans while standing alongside advertising hoardings for I think, by my count, there were 3 gambling companies that sponsor Newcastle United. But the truth is, this team, David, they got so many weapons under Eddie Howe. They're going to be fine without him, right?
Yeah, and they're going to be without him for a long time, it looks like, if previous bans and precedent have anything to do with it. Except in football, you never really know what's going to happen. But yeah, Newcastle, so many weapons, and a player. I mean, must be quite difficult for you to watch, but like Anthony Gordon just playing superb football under Eddie Howe now and just looking like the real deal.
Yeah, that ginger bastard. I got to say, Kieran Trippier, co-leading 6 assists of the season, immense. Jacob Murphy, just, my God. I mean, Eddie Howe has taken a run-of-the-mill player like Jacob Murphy and made him look immense. Callum Wilson surging, and yes, that ginger bastard, that turncoat ginger bastard, Anthony Gordon. Even I have to admit, and it pains me to say, he looks world-class right now, right?
He really does. Very few players with that level of speed have that level of skill and incisiveness on the ball.
And confidence now. Confidence and belief. Just an incredible finish. If you didn't see it, check out the Anthony Gordon goal. I feel sick saying these words. This was a stroll against a Palace who lacked the double trouble of Eze and Elise. They need those gents back. The battle against Tottenham still to come. 6 in the table, though, Newcastle. Best goal difference by some distance in the league. They surge into Champions League group of death, grip or grapple with Natural Blonde, Gio Reynas, Borussia Dortmund on Wednesday. And we'll break this one down in tomorrow's episode of European Nights with the mighty Rory Smith.
Bournemouth 1, Wolves 2. Gaz O'Neill returns to the apartment from which he was evicted and gives his former landlord a swift kick to the cherries. Bournemouth actually took the lead in the 17th minute via Dom Solanke, but the Black Country outfit stormed back in the second half, drawing level in the 47th minute via a tremendous strike from Matthias Cunha. Then in the 54th minute, Lewis Cook gave Hwang Hee-chan a little South Coast kiss in the form of a headbutt, soft though it may have been, and was promptly sent off. That opened the door for Wolves to snatch a late winner via Sasha Kalajic, and so Gary O'Neill gets one over on his former team in a result that proves spite is a hell of a drug.
God, Gary O'Neill, Memorial Derby. The manager, if you don't remember, he was fired by Bournemouth post-season despite keeping them up quite heroically at the end of the campaign, and he returned with his new mob. As you say, I mean, spite, I do believe, is definitely the single greatest motivator in football. I believe it's top 3 in life. And it all began so well.
You're very fond of spite, Rod.
I am. It's really the number 1. But I can't say that publicly because it makes me look like the awful human being that I am. But it looks so good for Bournemouth. Billing to Solanke, a crafty flick of a finish, but then they self-destructive, Sydney equaliser. That Lewis Cook red card, David, only in football do you do the insanely slight touching of heads thing that only counts as a headbutt, I believe, mathematically, because your opponent falls down in utter agony as if you proper begbeat them. Where else
Yeah.
in life do you come across that?
No, you don't come across it anywhere. I mean, it's not just head-to-head contact, it's any form of contact in football. I mean, just having watched the Beckham documentary, that's pretty clear with watching the Beckham red card against Argentina at the 98 World Cup. But yeah, it was soft. And yet, rather like the Beckham red card, it was just silly. It was just a very, very poor decision by Lewis Cook to even put his head anywhere near
Yeah.
his face.
It's a kind of moment that has led to 97% of rutting deer falling out of love with football. but,
You've been reading the Daily Express again.
I'm just outrage. Football gone soft, say rutting deer. But the rutting deer in the street interview is one of my favourite interviews. But the Cherries had to weather 40 minutes with 10 men. And they ultimately hung themselves on their own petard. 88th minute, almost there. But then the Bournemouth keeper in this season, in which no one can play keeper, TM, played the impressive back-to-front football that Iraola, their new manager, preaches, but he decided to play it suicidally up his own gut. Wolves pounced, and off the bench, Kalashnik finished ruthlessly off a beautiful dink pass from Hwang. Iraola, the manager-elect, the chosen one for Bournemouth, remains winless, overseeing the Cherries' longest winless start to a league season, 3 points from their first 9 matches, while Gary O'Neill took a victory lap in the sweetest of ways after his third win in 9 games with a Wolves squad that is very, very mid. And he pointed it out. He said there's a bit of difference depth-wise between the squads. We had a very different summer to them. We managed to make an £8 million profit while they spent over 100 million. So there is a big difference. That is rubbing the salt into the wound, aka, my name is Gary O'Neill. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Yeah, how good must it feel for him? Okay, Brentford 3,
David,
Burnley.
didn't they had a post-match glass of red wine?
What, the managers?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think Iraola would have enjoyed it very much if he did. But yeah, I hope they did. I think it's only Roy Hodgson who does that with every single manager. Invites them in for a bit of claret.
For a sherry. I'm sure it's a sherry for Roy.
Yeah, maybe. Brentford 3, Burnley 0. The Mighty Bees get just their second win of the season in a comprehensive beatdown of fellow strugglers Burnley. A Johan Wissa tap-in followed by a pair of absolute worldies from Brian Mbumo and Saman Godus keep the Clarets pinned in the relegation zone.
An early season 6-pointer won by the Bees, had a stroll. Scoreline honestly flattered Burnley, who were truly shambolic, particularly in the first half. I think the worry for them is that the same mistakes are being made without any kind of evident learning curve. Some class finishing by Brentford, really a symbol of the quality gap in player personnel, also tactical acumen. For Brentford's first league win since August, first at home all season, really a huge sigh of relief and a flourish for Thomas Frank, who rang up 5 magnificent years at Brentford this week, during which he's built up this club with a fearless, stylish, singular brand of football, established them. This is probably the greatest tribute as a true piece of Premier League furniture, which is, for that size of club, a remarkable achievement. Thomas Frank, essentially scanned out Coach Prime, but for reals.
Nottingham Forest 2, Luton 2, 4 second-half goals in this bonkers one, Rog. The first 2 from Bobby's Kiwi cousin, Chris Wood, scored via that absolute unit's forehead. But Luton refused to wilt, and in the 83rd minute, they pulled one back via Nigerian-born Irish international Chidozie Ogbene. And in the 92nd minute, it was Elijah Adebayo who pulled them level and have, at least for the moment, lifted Luton out of the drop zone. Some comeback here from the Hatters on the road.
Yeah, Forest fans, a lot of them have been fuming quietly with Steve Cooper's game management all season. They're convinced that his substitutions actually undermine their team rather than strengthen them at the depth. Really, something Jonas Eidval, the Arsenal women's manager, really stuck in my mind. He came on our show a lot during the Women's World Cup, and he said the greatest task for a manager is not your starting 11, it's the finishing 11. And Forest, particularly in this one, it felt more like a mental wilt, taking their opponent, the win almost for granted with 7 minutes to go. Luton may not have much hope, and they have even less financial backing, but they do have, I look at them with just an admirably ferocious mindset. Ross Barkley, got to be said. Anthony Gordon, before there was an Anthony Gordon, God bless him, changed the game when he came on. And they will need that kind of mindset. They have ahead Villa, Liverpool, Manchester United, back to back, which will define the first half of the season. I will say Liverpool, and I will say Luton's travelling fans, so loud all game, went rightly bonkers at the end after that 92nd minute equaliser. And you look at that, and I'll just say again, it's the memories that they make this season with their team, to me, which is what football's all about.
Okay, in a game that's coming up right about the time this pod is released, Tottenham take on Fulham in a London derby. And Spurs, of course, have the opportunity to go back top of the table with a win here. The vibes are immaculate in a week in which you dropped interviews with Mikel Arteta, a different side of the man there, Rog, as well as, I crap you not, Haaland and Grealish together on our YouTube. I loved that. You also just filmed with James Maddison, Rog. What was he like?
He's a really, really lovely bloke. He admitted, amongst other things, that he's playing the best football of his career in a sustained way under Ange Postecoglou. That he loves being a wrestling heel. He's not really a wrestling heel, though, is he? He's kind of like, he's a charming rogue. And he said in the middle of it, he said, "You're a poet with words," which I love, as opposed to all the other poets who use, I don't know what. But man, what an oozing with confidence bloke he is. He told me he warms up, Davo, get this, by listening to Rod Stewart, Maggie May, which I just love that idea of someone like him, like listening to like Tony Bennett-esque ballads and then unfurling a smooth jazz standard of a performance, which is James Maddison, the best poetry in its own way.
It's a banging tune. Go and listen to that if you
Maggie
haven't heard
May.
that before. Oh, I love it. It's a banger. I love that. A bit of Lloyd Cole, a bit of Maggie May. I know what I'm doing right after the pod.
Yeah, probably reading the Financial Times on a Sunday to that soundtrack, not going out and just destroying all comers with a delirious display of potent football. But God, James Maddison's brain is just wired brilliantly differently.
Okay, Rog, we've delayed this long enough. We've got to get into it.
Bollocks to this.
Liverpool 2, Everton 0. An early Saturday morning derby with your brother Nige, a lifelong Red, visiting in town, visiting the crap part of Bedford. A pair of second-half goals from who else? Mo Salah. Do the business, Rog. I just love it when the Bennett family group chat is live and in person. Tell us all about this one.
You know how much I hate Merseyside derby weekend, David, don't you?
Yeah,
I mean,
in recent years.
Yeah, but also still, I mean, football is meant to be a respite from the world. The world is truly dark. It is truly full of chaos and trauma. Really, football is meant to be a distraction, a respite from that which surrounds us. But when Liverpool play Everton, it only seems to reinforce my sense of doom and trauma, which I didn't think was possible.
Yeah,
even more so when that bastard Nigel Bennett, my older brother, whom I love, for reasons that are complicated. If you want to understand properly, Google, I put it in the newsletter this week, a podcast I recorded with my dad, in which he relives the awful trauma of Nige defecting and becoming a Liverpool fan. And he was in Manhattan.
Oh, I thought you were saying that the reasons why you love him are complicated. And I thought,
no, the reasons I love him is he's pretty bloody great.
Yeah.
He's an older brother who looks younger than me, and he loves, nothing gives him more pleasure than when people go up to him and go, "You look just like Roger Bennett. You his younger brother." He's just like deliriously giddy. I think it gives him life and joy, and he does. He looks a good 10 years younger than me. But he was here in Manhattan for the first time in 5 bloody years. He happened to time it just so that he could mock and deride me in front of my own kids in my own living room. He arrived. I've never seen him get up this early. 6:30, I think he got up for this. I've never seen him arrive with such an avaricious confidence. He knew Everton had only won once at Anfield in 25 bloody years. We hadn't won since 1999. We did win, yes, but that was in lockdown, fanless football. We stole one then. And this fixture is always a guaranteed darkness. But with Everton in the state they're in, 777, our financial saviors are being revealed. Surprise, surprise, to be just essentially a Ponzi scheme. This was not in the face. He came round 6:30. Never seen him so amped. Honestly, David, it was like you've got a brother, an older. It was like witnessing a jackal find a fresh wildebeest carcass to feast upon in an open savannah. That's how I'd describe his mood when he arrived.
Yeah, yeah. The relationship between brothers, particularly when you've got some form of rivalry. For my brother and I, it's on a tennis court. For you and Nige, it's played out watching the Merseyside derby. I mean, yeah, it's something else. True
God.
love, but true pain at exactly the same time.
Yeah, Everton unchanged after their historic win in their last game by virtue of the fact that it was, a win against Bournemouth. Liverpool knew they could go top, and beaten in 15 at home. Almost a whole bloody year of not losing in front of your home fans. I can't even conceive. Our best moment came within 36 seconds. DCL finally fully fit, rose above a flat-footed Big Verge, but I think wisely headed straight at a grateful keeper. He knew the rule, David. Don't you think? Don't score too early.
Yeah, it'd be tough in a Merseyside derby. At Anfield, are you crazy? You don't put that ball in the back of the net. And
Thank you.
and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, he obliged.
Yes, thank you, DCL.
Yeah.
Thank you. Liverpool, 76% possession early doors. McAllister, Soboslai, Gravenberch, midfield running the game. For Everton, honestly, best not to have the ball. We had 24% pass accuracy, I think. We honestly looked more vulnerable when we had a set piece. Every single corner we had.
Don't pass it.
Yes.
Don't pass it.
Yeah, I mean, it's groaning when we won a corner. We'd push our men up. Liverpool would immediately have a 4-on-2. And it was like one side could play football. One side had ideas. One side, had hunger. The other had vague intentions, a lot of huff and puff. It's honestly quite miserable to watch, knowing that the mistake was going to come at any second. It was just imminent. And my brother would just ha me like a Liverpool supporting Nelson Muntz to my Everton Ralph Wiggum. It was pitiful. Evertoning. We got the yellow cards. Tsimikas of Liverpool immune to any booking. Ashley Young, David, can we talk about him? 37 minutes, already on a yellow card. All that experience, all those years of playing, no composure, no leadership, 431 appearances. We always say experience is the greatest teacher. I don't know what the hell it's taught him. On a yellow card, dove into Luis Diaz, who was hell-bent on skinning him. It was pathetic. It was a madness.
Yeah, I mean, look, Ashley Young used to get his second yellow cards for diving, Roger, if you remember. It was just for diving and for simulation. Now he's actually diving in and making contact with opposing players.
Unnecessarily.
Yeah, totally. That second yellow card particularly was completely unnecessary.
And that way, miserable, just utterly bloody miserable. 29 red cards in this fixture. I think the most in the Premier League history. 20 of them have gone to Everton players. Ashley Young, you've etched your name in history. And that's what it feels like watching this derby. You are standing behind a donkey. You know that donkey is about to kick you in your down belows. And the only uncertainty is exactly when. My brother at halftime, we were 0-0. I was so psyched, punch in the air. That was I'd won the World Cup. I felt amazing. I hadn't scaled Everest ever in my life, but I'm pretty sure summiting that beast must feel similar as to getting halftime 0-0 in a derby. I turned to my brother, as you said, aren't you nervous, Nige? And he said, he was looking at his nails. He's like, nope, this is boring. We're going to win. The only question is how. And I realized in that very second, just the chasm in experience humanly between being an Everton fan, where you live on death row, where you're in perpetual fear of the executioner's blade, and the other one, the Liverpool one, the joy, the pleasure, the happiness, like living in a Wonka factory where you can just drink from the chocolate river. Almost too much chocolate is the only problem. Second half, Pete Deitch took off every atom in our bodies it was attacking, flung on Patterson, and mistaken human fool Michael Keane. Played, I think it was 12 across the back. Really Deitch's dream in many ways.
Exactly. Nothing gets him going more than 12 at the back.
Yeah, 12 at the back. Prefer that to an orgy if I was given the chance. Honestly, it was like Tess of the D'Urbervilles where she cuts off her own eyebrows so she can just obliterate her own beauty. Everton playing what my youngest son, Ozzy, he calls shitty Taka. He screams at the television. And it is. I mean, Klopp up the ante, yanked off a defender, flung on Harvey Elliott, an agent of chaos, Darwin Nunez, who were real game changers. We'll talk quickly. Konate, David, Liverpool defender, already on the yellow. We had an attack. Beto breaking through the middle. No attempt by Konate to play the ball at all. Didn't get a second yellow, Konate, like Young had. Immediately yanked deliriously, probably laughing by Jurgen Klopp. What did you make of that? Should have been a second yellow, right?
Yeah, I mean, I refer you to all the comments I made earlier about referees and, the laws of the game and the spirit of the game and what it should have been. But within the same game, what felt like the absolute equivalent challenge, which resulted in a second yellow for Ashley Cole. This one even had sort of less intent to actually get to the ball, I would say, by
Thank you.
Konate. Should have been a second yellow for him. Even Jurgen Klopp, I mean, frankly, post-game, after he's won 2-0, admits, yeah, perhaps we were fortunate not to go and get the second yellow card. He yanked off Konate right after that moment. But yeah, I can't believe that wasn't given.
I agree with you, and I thank you as a neutral. But can I just say, conspiracy theorists would say that it feels like a slight bit of match official kind of payback for the Spurs injustice, Liverpool getting all the calls. The honest truth is, for me, it didn't even hurt. I wasn't even howling because the fact that it was Liverpool and they always find a way to do us, always, it just made the pain, the sense of being wronged in the moment, just feel numb to it at this point. The result's known in this game before kickoff. It's only the journey to that agony and the way in which you're going to go through pain as an Everton fan that varies. There's always a refereeing decision or a goal off an Origi shoulder. You're about to go on it, or we have to go on our hands and knees across smashed glass. There's always some kind of traumatic excruciation. So this was just a drop of pain in a sea of lived agony, David.
I love the fact, Rog, that you've already, the first time you referred to the pain, the inevitable pain that you knew was coming in this fixture, you referred to it as a donkey kick in your nuts. And you've now re-explained that pain in 15 different ways that are all beautifully visible. You are a poet with words. But frankly, I'm still waiting for us to get to the donkey kick in the nuts because that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, by the way, bite your arm off for a donkey kick in the nuts. Bite your arm off just if you skip around. 72nd minute, Diaz accelerated down the left, slapped the ball across. Who did it hit? Of course, could only be Michael bloody Keane. Thanks to physics and running and gravity, his arm was out. VAR loved giving it. Michael Keane, always him. Him.
This is amazing. Frank Lampard was right about.
Well, God, yes, Davo. Yes. I mean, any other defender tries to do that. Michael Keane, never seen a ball he doesn't like to move his hands towards. This is amazing. Almost swatted it aside. Yeah. 3 of the last 4 penalties Everton have given away have been conceded by Keane.
It was quite nice, actually. It was quite refreshing as a neutral, I'm sure not for you, but to see a non-controversial handball penalty call.
Yeah,
it was so clean cut.
At the same time, I hate football and I hate my life. Mo Salah thrashed the penalty home. Would have hurt more if it wasn't so predictable. Got a second in Origi time. Liverpool were top briefly. Mo Salah overtook club legends King Kenny Dalglish and Saudi Steven Gerrard as all-time Anfield goal scorer. Liverpool, got to say, oddly subdued at Anfield for a derby. Felt like a one-sided kind of piece of significance, and that one side always loses. My brother patted me on the head at full time. I was like, oh, God, that was awful. He goes, it's just another win. It's a minor game against minor opposition. That's what he said to me at halftime. He just walked out immediately. Minor game, minor opposition. David, I've watched one win at Anfield over the course of half of my football life. And that's just... It's not depressing. It's whatever's down from depressing. I don't know. Psychologists, please email in, meninblazers@gmail.com. There's a philosopher I read, Emil Churapan, who once wrote, we take our pain. One of the greatest delusions of the average man is to forget that life is death's prisoner. And that is Merseyside derby summed up succinctly. Everton have got worse coming. We've got the financial fair play ruling to be announced imminently. Points deduction or a fine will be announced this month, David. This is real night in the face time.
Yeah. Anything to stop 777 partners taking over your club, Rog. We'll see.
By the way, which would be the worst thing and the best thing to happen to my club at the same time. That's kind of sums up where we are. Minor win against minor opposition. That bastard. Those words hurt.
It doesn't make Nigel a better person because his team won. Rog, doesn't
Kinda
make you a
does.
worse person. No, it
Kinda
does not.
does.
Okay, before we go, a quick reminder about everything we've got happening at Men in Blazers this week, powered by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. European Nights is back tomorrow. Woohoo! With you and Rory Smith welcoming European football's return into your loving arms. And there's a special edition of Do It Live going down on YouTube, remember. YouTube Live tomorrow night at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Do not miss that. Rog, can we get a toast to close us out?
Oh, I want to raise this shot of Jägermeister, this bolt of human emotion in a shot glass to Lionel Messi, whose truncated yet seismic first American season ended this weekend in slightly damp squib form as Inter Miami lost 1-0 to Charlotte. All those massive vibes and that white-hot spotlight that burns so furiously after his arrival, the 12-match unbeaten run at the outset, the League's Cup tchotchke, the StubHub breaking ticket prices, the Apple season pass subscription flurry, the Miami pink jersey scarcity, all ended with Miami winless in their final 6 league matches, Messi nursing nagging injuries and just doing pizza atrocities. The entire team well off the pace, finishing 14th, just one spot higher, I think, than when he arrived. Messi is going to be 37 next year.
14th doesn't get you into the MLS playoffs anymore.
I think it gets you into the playoff rounds for the League's Cup.
Got it. Okay, got it.
Winners' Cup. But I don't know how it works. But I do know he's going to be 37 next year. And the extent to which he can and will be able to tolerate just the battering of another entire season, that remains to be seen. Into Miami, are soaring commercially. New stadium set to open 2025, Messi's last year. They're about to go on tour, I think, to China. How they handle him, how they build around him, the extent to which he can maintain the ability to litter transcendent moments across the course of an entire campaign. And also who follows in the league so that the league can be so much more than a one-man gent. From a global profile perspective, all of that remains to be answered. But I want to say, I've savoured every single second of Lionel Messi being on our shores. It is magnificent. It is surreal, both on the field and off it, particularly when he goes to Publix supermarket and does a shopping spree to more of our life in the Messiverse, David.
Absolutely. Here. Okay, you can follow us on Twitter at Men in Blazers, at MC Davis, at Rog Bennett, on Instagram at Men in Blazers, at MC Davis, on Facebook, Men in Blazers, twitch.tv/Men in Blazers. Also at TikTok, look for it at Men in Blazers. You can always email us at meninblazers@gmail.com. And as we said, check out YouTube for the Do It Live, moving there immediately. We love and cherish all of your interaction, all of your contact. Venderpunkt, Rog.
War Pig.
Was that a Rabona?
I like snacks.
Balls win.
Take that, Gloria.
Balls lose.
To Tweed.
Abrigado, rock on, mate.
Kung Fu Fight in America. Love you, Davo.
I love you, Rog.
Minor win. Minor opposition. Words hurt. Listen to the full version of this podcast and all our podcasts wherever you get your pods. But first, subscribe here for more Men in Blazers videos and courage.